It was just another quiet night at the diner, until a customer's payment revealed a name no one expected to hear again. The place was almost empty. Tuesday nights always were. A few truckers nursed bottomless cups of coffee at the counter, a young couple shared fries in a corner booth, and the hum of the neon sign outside flickered against the rain-speckled windows. From my seat at the register, I could see him, back booth, far corner, the one that gave a clear line to the door and both windows. He'd been there since 6 p.m., and it was almost closing time. Same order every time: black coffee, apple pie, no ice cream. No one paid him much attention. He was just there, quiet. Always in the same seat. He wore a brown leather jacket that had seen better decades, the collar creased and worn to a soft shine. A faded ball cap sat low on his brow, shadowing a face lined by time but not softened by it. His hands, though, steady. They didn't tremble when he lifted the cup, didn't fidget with the fork. Every movement was measured. I'd seen him maybe a dozen times over the past year. Always alone, always the same order. Never brought a phone, never stayed past closing. But tonight, something different was in the air. At 8:47 p.m., he finished his pie, took a slow sip of coffee, and glanced at the wall clock like he was timing something. Then he reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out a worn brown wallet, and slid a card onto the edge of the table. I noticed it when I went over to clear the empty plate. It wasn't a credit card. It was old, laminated, edges fraying. A small photograph, a block of typed letters, and a name printed in all caps: Jackson M. Hale. The top corner bore an emblem I'd only ever seen once before: a gold trident crossed over an anchor, a pistol, and a flintlock musket. The Navy SEAL insignia. And under the name, in small block print, the words, "Retired, Special Warfare Command." I froze. You don't just see something like that and shrug it off. "Sir," I asked, keeping my voice low, "is this yours?" He looked up at me for the first time that night. His eyes were sharp, not unkind, but searching, like he was trying to decide how much I needed to know. "It is," he said simply, his voice low and even. I didn't know what to say next. You hear stories about these guys, the things they've done, the things they've seen, but you never expect to run into one in the corner booth of a sleepy roadside diner. Before I could think of anything else, the door chimed. 3 men walked in, the kind you notice without meaning to. Not in uniform, but their posture gave them away. Straight-backed, scanning the room without moving their heads. They spotted him immediately. The tallest of them stepped forward, stopping at the edge of the booth. "Chief," he said quietly, "you didn't answer your phone." "I don't carry one," Hale replied. The other 2 men slid into the booth across from him without asking. There was no small talk, no introductions, just a silence that carried more weight than any words. I busied myself behind the counter, but I couldn't help catching pieces of their conversation. "Funeral's tomorrow," one of them said. Hale nodded once. "I know. You coming?" Another pause. "Not sure I should." That was it. No explanation, no backstory. But whatever hung in that space between them was heavy. The tallest man reached into his jacket and set something on the table, a folded, sun-bleached American flag, the kind you see draped over a coffin. Hale's eyes lingered on it for a long moment, then he slid it back across the table. "You keep it," he said. The men didn't argue. They stayed maybe 20 minutes, most of it in silence. When they stood to leave, each of them gave Hale a slight nod. Not a handshake, not a hug, just a nod. Then they were gone. The diner felt different after that. Hale reached for the card I'd seen earlier and tucked it back into his wallet. Then he placed a $20 bill on the table for a $7 check and stood to leave. That's when I noticed something else. Where the wallet had been, pressed into the table's surface, was a small metal coin. heavy, gold-colored, about the size of a silver dollar. On one side, the same seal trident insignia. On the other, 2 words, "Still here." I picked it up and looked toward the door, but he was already gone, the bell above it still swaying from his exit. I didn't see him again for almost a month. When he came back, it was the same booth, the same order. But this time, a man I'd never seen before walked in halfway through his meal and sat across from him. Younger, early 30s maybe, with the kind of squared-off shoulders you get from years in uniform. They didn't talk at first. Then, the younger man reached into his jacket and placed a photo on the table. From my angle, I could see it was old, desert background, a group of men in dusty combat gear, arms over each other's shoulders. Hale was in the center, younger but unmistakable. The younger man said something I couldn't hear. Hale studied the photo for a long moment, then pushed it back toward him. "You keep it," he said again. The man nodded, stood, and left without another word. And just like before, Hale finished his coffee, left cash on the table, and disappeared into the night. Over time, I pieced together little bits of his story from scraps of conversation and the quiet respect he seemed to draw from the few who recognized him. A name here, a date there, nothing you could Google. But one thing was clear. The world had forgotten who Jackson M. Hale was. The men who hadn't forgotten didn't talk about it, and Hale wasn't about to remind anyone. And yet, he kept coming back. Same booth, same order, same silence, until the night everything changed. It was late January, snow starting to stick on the highway. I was wiping down the counter when 2 sheriff's deputies came in, scanning the room. Their eyes landed on Hale. They approached slowly. "Mr. Hale?" one asked. He looked up. "Yes." The deputy set a manila envelope on the table. "From the Department of the Navy. Signature required." Hale didn't open it, just signed the clipboard, took the envelope, and slid it into his jacket pocket. The deputies left. He didn't move for a long time after that, just sat staring at the coffee cup in front of him like it held an answer he didn't want to find. When he finally stood, he left the envelope on the table. I shouldn't have looked, but I did. Inside was a single sheet of paper. It read, "Notification of Posthumous Award, Medal of Honor. Recipient, Chief Special Warfare Operator Jackson M. Hale. Reason classified." The date of the award was 2 weeks from now. Hale had left before I could say anything. He didn't come back to the diner after that, not once. Months later, I heard from a customer that he'd passed away quietly in his sleep. No family listed, no funeral notice in the paper. But the day after the news spread, something happened. One by one, men started showing up at the diner. Some in uniform, some in jeans and ball caps, some limping on old injuries. They didn't speak much, just ordered coffee and sat in the back booth. And in the center of the table they placed the same gold coin I'd seen that first night, the one that said, "Still here." It kept happening, every year on the same date. We never took the booth out of service, we never moved the coins, and every time I wipe down that table, I think about the man who sat there in silence, carrying a history the world will never fully know. Because sometimes the greatest stories aren't the ones we tell. They're the ones we keep. So now I'll ask you, have you ever met someone like Jackson Hale? Someone who never asked for praise, who never told their story, but who changed lives anyway? Write their name in the comments, share how they lived, say the things they never would, because they deserve to be remembered. Here at Story of the Humanity, we honor the ones who don't ask for recognition, only for respect. Thank you for watching. Subscribe, share, and help us keep their voices alive. And next time you see someone sitting quietly in a back booth, take a closer look. You might be looking at a piece of history